After rebirth, when Ethan's little secretary once again used the excuse of pouring wine for me to playfully stamp a pork chop seal on my face, I didn't slap Ethan's little secretary like in my previous life. Nor did I, like in my previous life, act like a shrew demanding a divorce when Ethan defended his little secretary. Instead, I calmly smiled at Ethan. She's really cute, have fun with her. This time, let's consider our 7th wedding anniversary ended early. I'm going home first. After saying that, I picked up my bag and left the private room without looking back. There was no other way. After all, in my previous life, after divorcing Ethan, I was truly miserable. He crushed me precisely like defeating an opponent, tightly holding on to his fortune without letting go. And even after searching for lawyers all over the city, I only got 48 yuan in divorce assets. But right after the divorce, I was diagnosed with cancer. When the pain was killing me, I lost my dignity and knelt before Ethan. But he allowed his female secretary to slap me 3 times and didn't give me a single penny. In the end, penniless, I froze to death at the doorstep of the home where I had lived for 7 years. So, dignity is nothing compared to life. But I didn't expect Ethan to chase after me. He grabbed my hand. Listen to my explanation, Serena. Ivy is just young and playful, that's why she thought of using the pork chop seal to tease you. She doesn't have bad intentions, she grew up with me, always clever and mischievous, and since she sees you as my wife, she momentarily lost her sense of boundaries. Don't be angry with her. These words Ethan had said in my previous life too. At that time, insulted by Ivy with the pork chop seal, I was already trembling with anger. Hearing Ethan defend Ivy with such gentle words, I completely lost my temper. In front of all our friends, I slapped Ethan and shouted divorce before running out of the private room. I was really foolish back then, thinking I could threaten Ethan with divorce. But I ended up walking in the cold winter drizzle, tears streaming, for a full 4 hours on the street. My heels were rubbed raw by the high heels, bleeding. I even got soaked and developed a 40-degree fever. But while I lay at home barely hanging on, Ethan not only didn't call to check on me but even took Ivy on a business trip abroad that very night. Photos and videos of him adjusting Ivy's halter dress strap and Ivy leaning down to kiss his cheek even made it to their company's gossip list. It was too ironic. My lips unconsciously curled into a sneer. But in the next instant, Ethan suddenly angrily shook off my hand that was holding him. How many times do I have to tell you? Ivy is my dad's friend's daughter, that's why I take care of her a bit. It's just a pork chop stamp, you can wash it off at home. Can you stop inexplicably getting jealous over random guesses about my relationship with her? Seeing the sudden anger rise on his face, a bitter feeling welled up in my chest. But it wasn't because of him, but for my previous self. In my previous life, after the divorce, I had the most painful cancer in the world, pancreatic cancer. Every day, it was either nurses poking me with long needles until tears and snot covered my face, or me clutching my abdomen tightly, rolling on the ground, crying and begging for death to come sooner. When I was most broke, I even stabbed my emaciated body repeatedly with a fruit knife, just hoping to get a full night's sleep. But even in that state, I couldn't bear to sell our wedding ring to pay for painkillers. Even when the doctor gave me an ultimatum that I had only 1 month left, I dragged my withered, emaciated body intending to find him and remarry. After all, he had once sworn to me when my parents died that he would accompany me for life. But when I found the home where I had lived for 7 years, knelt on the ground kowtowing to the security guard to get him to contact Ethan. Ethan, upon hearing me call his name once, calmly said to me, "Serena, we're divorced. Divorce means no more relations from now on, so whatever happens to you, don't contact me anymore." After that, he hung up the phone. Then I collapsed in the backyard of the villa where he and I had lived for 7 years. At the final end as my life faded, I saw him holding his female secretary Ivy, in the home I had once carefully managed, using the bowls I bought, the wine glasses I carefully selected, having a sweet date and intimate kisses. My chest ached suffocatingly, not wanting to recall my previous self anymore. I quickly composed my emotions and calmly smiled. "Ethan, I really wasn't jealous, and I'm really not angry with Ivy. I'm just tired and want to go home. You should go back quickly. Ethan's face flashed with a few traces of surprise. And while he was stunned, I didn't glance at him and turned to walk towards the street outside. After returning home, I immediately went back to the room. Then I dialed the hospital's phone, booked a special expert appointment, and scheduled a physical checkup for myself tomorrow. After all, whether in the previous life or this one, I really want to live. But just as I hung up the hospital call, Ethan unexpectedly returned for some reason. He somewhat impatiently untied his tie. What did you mean on the street earlier? Serena, can you stop throwing tantrums over nothing? Ever since Ivy became Ethan's secretary, he had been exceptionally harsh to me, finding faults in whatever I did. It was because of his change in attitude towards me, plus Ivy's provocations, that in my previous life's marriage, I went crazy and did all sorts of outrageous things. I endured the suffocating pain in my chest and calmly turned around. Ethan, whether you believe it or not, I'm really not angry, not being unreasonable, and I didn't throw a tantrum at you. Look, the pork chop stamp on my face is already washed off, so I'm really not upset with you, and I wouldn't dare be upset with Ivy. After saying that, I didn't glance at Ethan again and turned to the bathroom, locking the door tightly. When I came out again, Ethan was gone, but my WeChat started blowing up with messages. This was Ivy's habit. Whenever she was with Ethan, she would constantly send me photos of their life together, treating me like a file transfer assistant. In my previous life, because of this, I would often be provoked by Ivy into wailing, or I couldn't hold back my temper and make a big scene with Ethan. But now, looking at the photos Ivy sent, I didn't curse her as before. Instead, I sincerely commented, "Your phone angle is wrong, Ethan's profile looks better. Next time, remember to hold the phone higher. Also, look at the blank space in your photo, it should be less, so you and Ethan look more intimate." As soon as I sent the WeChat, Ivy replied, "Your account got hacked." I sent her a smile emoji. "No, just wanted to notify you that Ethan is yours now." After saying that, I blocked Ivy's WeChat. This triangular relationship is pretty good now. I want the status of Mrs. Ethan and the supplementary card he gives me. Ethan's body and person, if Ivy wants them, I'll give them to her. Unlike my previous self, foolishly only wanting Ethan's love. After dealing with Ivy, I lay on the bed and calmly closed my eyes. But that night, even though I was reborn, I still didn't sleep well. I still dreamed of my past with Ethan, just like when I had cancer in my previous life. As a child, Ethan was introverted and didn't like to talk, so his mother, a special grade teacher, often beat him. Often at midnight, I had already slept once, but he was still wearing thick glasses writing exam papers, with his mother standing beside him holding a stick. Every time he got one wrong, his mom would raise the stick and heavily hit his back. Back then, living opposite him, every time I saw him being beaten by his mom at night, I felt he was pitiful. So whenever I got candy, I would secretly stuff it into his backpack on the way to school, then smile and tell him, "Ethan, when your back hurts, eat one." The first time I gave Ethan candy, his face turned red from holding back. Only after I ran 100 meters away did he murmur lowly towards me, I don't eat candy." And I just smiled and waved. "Ethan, you should talk more, your voice is really nice." After that, it seemed to become a habit. The once always solitary Ethan got used to waiting for me, and used to me stuffing candy into his backpack. Just like that, in the alley outside our neighborhood, I walked with Ethan through countless springs, countless summers, countless winters. Until the year we turned 18, Ethan, as the county's top scorer, admitted to a key university, pushed his glasses awkwardly and handed me a school number. I checked this school, it's very close to mine, only 10 minutes walk. "Your score isn't enough for undergraduate, but you can do a junior college." Looking at his awkward appearance, I didn't tell him that my dad and mom had a late-night meeting after getting my college entrance exam results, saying that even if it was a third-tier undergraduate, I should do an undergraduate degree, our family could afford it. After that, I secretly changed my college application choices without telling my mom and dad. Even though the ultimate price was getting a thorough beating from both of them, I never regretted it. After that, Ethan and I went to the same city for university. His life away from his mom seemed blessed. He took off the heavy glasses, wore contacts, grew his buzz cut into curls, and even changed his dressing style, shedding plaid shirts for white ones. The once unchanging black sneakers turned into white mesh shoes. I didn't know why Ethan changed like this until once again, when I screamed in excitement because my favorite star was coming to my university city for a concert. Ethan grabbed me with red eyes. "I've changed into the look you like for you, and you still can't like me?" The word like hammered into my heart like a heavy mallet. Even though we attended different schools, I had heard of Ethan's legend, a tech major genius, in his freshman year, representing the school in competitions and winning the national championship. In his sophomore year, he got an offer from a big company due to his fluent coding skills. And because of his sudden change in appearance, there was even a group of women who started a thread documenting Ethan's transformation. Originally, I thought there was an ocean between us, forever stopping at friends, but I didn't expect Ethan to say he liked me. Always thick-skinned, I didn't think twice and tiptoed to kiss Ethan initiatively. After that, we started dating. Then, my main thing was feeding Ethan various milk teas, desserts, and sweets I liked, so I had no life plans. Every day was either researching what to feed Ethan, what to drink, or what to play. Ethan's life was still blessed. He started entrepreneurship during graduate school, got multiple fundings right after graduating master's, and right after PhD, his tech company ranked in the top 10 tech companies. In contrast to Ethan's life, mine seemed cursed afterward. I failed to upgrade from junior college to bachelor's. After university graduation, I lived entirely on Ethan's allowance. Even my parents who loved me since childhood died in a car accident on the way to visit me, hospitalized with pneumonia in the second year after my graduation. As an orphan, I hugged my parents' bodies crying until tears soaked through. And Ethan knelt beside my parents' bodies, in his mother's gloomy and disgusted eyes, swore to take care of me for life. Ethan and I entered marriage. I had multiple miscarriages, losing each pregnancy. Until later, when Ethan met Ivy, he started despising me for lacking depth. All day just asking what he eats and drinks. Unlike Ivy, who can chat with him about world-famous paintings, about the future development prospects of the internet industry. Tears filled my eyes. When I opened them, I realized it was already dawn. And just like in my previous life, I had cried the pillow wet. Coincidentally, Ethan's WeChat came, "Go to the nursing home to see my mom this afternoon." Looking at Ethan's WeChat, I calmly replied, "I have something today, no time." Ethan's call came immediately. "What do you have today?" "Serena, how many times do I have to tell you?" "Ivy and I have nothing. Why do you have to cling to a small matter?" Hearing Ethan mention Ivy again, my lips curled in sarcasm. Since his entrepreneurial success, Ethan was used to concise speech. This was the first time he dwelled on one thing. So was he trying to convince himself he hadn't fallen for Ivy, or reduce his guilt towards me? My chest trembled with pain, but I calmly explained to Ethan again, "Ethan, I'm not feeling well. I need to go to the hospital for a checkup. I really can't accompany you to see your mom today. Also, your mom has heart disease, and she always hates me. Isn't it better if I don't go to the nursing home to anger her? And doesn't your mom like Ivy a lot? Saying your status only matches Ivy's, let her accompany you." I was genuinely advising Ethan kindly, but unexpectedly, he lost his temper again. "Serena, keep being dramatic." After saying that, he hung up. And listening to his phone voice, my lips curled in sarcasm again. See, that's the difference between love and no love. After all, the Ethan who loved me before would panic and ask if he did something wrong to upset me whenever I showed a slight aggrieved expression. But now, the Ethan who doesn't love me thinks I'm being unreasonable even when I sincerely offer suggestions. My chest felt bitter again, but I didn't delay long and went to the hospital. Even fearing that receiving calls would affect my mood, I didn't bring my phone. After all, this checkup was very important, determining if I would follow the same fate as my previous life. So for the next 7 days, I stayed in the hospital every day, doing various biopsies, having tubes of blood drawn. And being able to do such detailed checks, I have to thank Ethan's connections and bank card. By mentioning Ethan's name, the expert appointment I waited a whole month for in my previous life without success, now this doctor checks on me first every rounds. In my previous life, without a penny, I could only sell bags and jewelry, without special channels. Each check required a hospital visit, waiting 2 hours for blood draw, a week for CT. But now with Ethan, I just lie in the VIP ward, and special nurses come to check me. But fortunately, the result was good. I did have cancer, but early stage. When telling me, the doctor had a face full of regret, but I cried trembling all over. Everyone thought I was scared by the cancer, but only I knew I was happy. Because I finally had a chance to live. On the day I got the results, I applied for hospitalization, chemotherapy, treatment. I was very confident I could cure the disease. In this life, I have money, the best doctors, and can use the best medicine. Although chemotherapy was still tough, because it was early stage, the drugs were light, plus imported drugs. Compared to the strong side effects of domestic drugs in my previous life, I felt much better this life. Besides losing hair and slimming down, I still had energy to stroll outside every day. Even because of the doctor's medication, I never felt the intense pain of pancreatic cancer attacks once. Even after 1 month of treatment, the doctor gave me a lot of courage. He told me that if I endured 2 more chemotherapy cycles, I could likely be discharged. This was like a spark of hope igniting in my heart. You know, in my previous life, my biggest dream was to cure the disease and live. But unexpectedly, when I was to pay for the 3rd treatment, the hospital suddenly notified me that my supplementary card was stopped, and I couldn't pay the medical fees. When hearing the nurse's words, I was calm. After all, as long as I hadn't divorced Ethan now, he must pay for my treatment. So that day, I calmly asked the nurse for leave and took a taxi to Ethan's company. Just at the door, I was stopped by the receptionist. "Sorry, miss, if you want to see Ethan, you need an appointment in advance." Looking at the receptionist, I just smiled slightly and took out my marriage certificate with Ethan. "Can I see Ethan with this marriage certificate?" The receptionist took it, looked twice, and hurriedly stood up. "Sorry, madam, I didn't know it was you." I just calmly shook my head and followed the receptionist to the elevator. Passing the office area, many scrutinizing eyes looked towards me. I knew I looked ugly now, bald, hospital gown under a thick down jacket, but I didn't feel embarrassed at all. You know, in my previous life after divorce, when really broke for treatment, I came to Ethan's company to borrow money. But regrettably, I didn't even enter Ethan's company door, stopped by the receptionist outside. After all, then I only had a divorce certificate, not a marriage one. Just at the top floor door, I heard playful chatting inside the office. "Secretary Ivy, Ethan asked me to find a lawyer to draft a divorce agreement. Is Ethan wanting a divorce?" I say, Ethan should have divorced long ago. His wife, we've never seen, don't know what kind of unpresentable woman, heard she's a junior college grad, just lucky to find a husband like Ethan. A good man like Ethan only matches someone of Secretary Ivy's status. Isn't that right? Last time I accompanied Ethan to meet clients, all clients asked why Secretary Ivy didn't come, saying without her, Ethan has no spirit, not even willing to drink with them. Ivy just smiled slightly. "What nonsense are you saying? Ethan and I are just friends, my dad admires him a lot, that's why he let me learn at his company. Without Ethan's divorce, I won't do anything with him." Divorce, well, it's fast anyway. Hearing the words inside, my lips curled in sarcasm. Is this the difference between love and no love? Before Ivy came to work here, Ethan was strict, not allowing anyone to chat idly in the secretariat. But now, these people can gossip freely there. But I just calmly smiled and pushed open the glass door to enter. "Sorry, everyone, your Ethan won't divorce, he'll only lose his wife." Everyone looked at me in horror. Ivy's expression was especially cracked. She hurriedly glanced at the people around and subconsciously said, "What are you doing here? Isn't brother Ethan forbidding you to come to the company?" I just calmly met her gaze. "When did Ethan tell you that I'm not allowed to come to the company?" After saying that, I concisely took out the card from my bag. Was it you who stopped this supplementary card, or Ethan? Ivy's face suddenly flushed red. How would I know? I nodded. Fine, I'll go in to find Ethan. After saying that, I turned to walk towards Ethan's office, but in the next instant, Ivy came over and tightly gripped my wrist with the indwelling needle. You're not allowed in, Brother Ethan is in a meeting. The wrist she gripped tightly instantly pained. If no accident, it was likely needle slippage. I slightly frowned, pushed her away backhand, and slapped her face. The surprise came too fast. Ivy covered her face, looking at me incredulously. And I just calmly lifted the clothes on my wrist. Sure enough, blood had seeped out, the needle twisted into the flesh. I reached to pull out the needle, frowned slightly, pressed the bleeding pinhole, then frowned and said, You grabbed until my blood came out first, that's why I hit you. You've had needles too, you should know how painful slippage is, so you can't blame me. Ivy tightly covered her face, looking at me full of resentment. Why did you hit me? I'm Brother Ethan's secretary, he's in a meeting, I don't let you in to find him, what's wrong with that? In my previous life, I knew Ivy couldn't understand human words. Unexpectedly, in this life, she still can't. So I just helplessly sighed long, turned to look at the other secretaries around. You can understand my explanation just now, right? Everyone hurriedly looked at me, daring neither to nod nor shake heads. And in the moment I frowned, the office door was opened wide. Ethan came out, slightly frowning, looking at me. What are you doing here? But in an instant, Ivy behind me pounced into Ethan's arms. Brother Ethan, Serena hit me. Ethan's face instantly became somewhat annoyed. And I just calmly met Ethan's gaze, raised my wrist. She grabbed me until needle slippage first. But Ethan just glanced me up and down a few times, then angrily scolded, Where have you been fooling around this time, making yourself look like this ghost? Hearing Ethan's words, my lips showed a bitter smile. I didn't expect, looking like this, Ethan still said I was fooling around. I just calmly met his gaze. I wasn't fooling around, I just went to the hospital for treatment. I told you initially, I wasn't feeling well and needed a checkup. Unfortunately, the hospital check revealed cancer. If you still don't believe me, you can go to the hospital to check records. There are all my consultation and chemotherapy records. Ethan's pupils contracted violently, he pushed Ivy away and walked towards me. Cancer? How could it be cancer? Seeing the urgency in his brows, I just calmly met his gaze. Just pancreatic cancer, now in chemotherapy. But the bank card you gave me was stopped by you. I have no money for treatment, so I had to risk infection to come ask you for money. So Ethan, will you give the life-saving money? When saying the last 6 words, I was especially provocative, even with sarcasm on my lips. No way around it, although I was long disappointed in Ethan. In my previous life, I had asked him for money countless times, failing each time. Ethan's figure trembled fiercely, his eyes turned from shock to immense pain. Then, he erupted in a fierce roar. Serena, you have such a serious illness, why didn't you tell me? So these 2 months you didn't answer calls, and had the nanny throw away all things at home, because you were in the hospital treating illness. Do you know these 2 months I've been looking for you? You didn't bring your phone, disappeared, but secretly went for treatment. Hearing Ethan still blaming me even after hearing about my illness, I just smiled slightly and said, So will you restore this card? If not, I'll go home to sell bags. The doctor said I need 2 more chemotherapy courses to be discharged. Ethan's expression showed horror again. Can you stop smiling? I smiled again. No, Ethan, I finally survived. After saying that, I didn't glance at Ethan again, smiled and turned to leave his office. And just as I returned to the hospital, Ethan restored my card. After that, I frequently heard nurses say Ethan wanted to visit me. Hearing the nurses, I just calmly smiled. Visit me? What's there to visit? The Serena who wanted his company in the previous life is already dead. After that, I patiently stayed in the hospital again. To avoid meeting Ethan, I didn't even go downstairs for strolls. Occasionally when asleep, there was a figure beside. I knew it was Ethan, but I pretended not to know. After all, I really didn't want to waste words talking to him. After that, I stayed in the hospital for another 2 months before discharge. On the discharge day, I flew abroad. Then, I settled in a leisurely small town abroad. Walking the dog, tending flowers every day, quite flavorful. Ethan did come to find me a few times, but each time he only stood at my door for a night, leaving the next day. I knew why he was like this. He, like me, possessed memories of the previous life. He had cried to me while I was asleep in the hospital. He said in the previous life, he didn't know I would live so miserably after divorce, he was just angry that I wanted to divorce him, so he ignored me. He said it was the next day, discovering my frozen stiff body at the villa door, that he knew how much he regretted, understood what he lost. He said a lot, that night even cried my hospital gown wet with tears. But lying on the bed hearing his cries, I pretended to sleep uncomfortably, even several times almost couldn't hold back wanting to slap his face. But I ultimately held back, after all, I really didn't want to repeat the previous life's old path. So I silently pretended not to know, silently acted as if I didn't hear. After that, I strictly followed doctor's orders, regular checkups, timely medication. Finally, after 5 years without recurrence, I got the doctor's notice that I was cured. That day, standing at the hospital door holding the checkup report, I cried trembling all over. I finally changed the previous life's ending of dying from cancer. And that same day, I mailed a divorce agreement to Ethan. That night, Ethan appeared at my home door. Seeing him, I just calmly called him upstairs. "Ethan, let's talk." Ethan came upstairs, but upon seeing me, his eyes reddened. "Serena, can we not divorce?" And I just calmly met his gaze. "Then can you divide your assets half to me, company shares, properties all half?" Ethan's pupils scattered with panic. The company equity is tricky, so, Serena. I directly interrupted him, then calmly stood up to the window, looking at the falling snow outside. "Do you know what the doctor said to Serena before she died?" "The doctor said she couldn't go out, her body was very weak and she would die." But Serena still supported her body out of the hospital. She said she had regrets unfinished, said the former Ethan promised to accompany her for life, so she said she wanted to die in Ethan's arms. She said in this life she had no relatives left, only a lonely self, her cancer was too painful, she wanted a bit of warmth when dying, letting the boy who once wore thick glasses, like how she fed him candy, feed her a candy at her life's end. So even if the body hurt so much, she still used her last burst of energy to come find you. But you, upon receiving the call, just said you two were divorced, no relations anymore, and hung up. After saying that, I paused, calmly turned back to look at Ethan. "Ethan, you failed Serena's deep affection for you. You love fame and fortune, love your Ethan status, even love other women. But in Serena's life, she only loved you." I was originally saying calmly, but tears unconsciously slid from my eye corners. Although I long stopped considering myself the previous life's Serena, the previous life really hurt. Hurt so that even now mentioning it, my chest trembles. I calmly wiped the tears from my eye corners, then said to Ethan again. "So, Ethan, let's divorce, handle the assets as you see fit." After saying that, I didn't glance again at the man sitting in the living room, head down, tears dripping into the teacup, and turned back to the room. When waking the next day, on the table was only a cup of long cold tea, and a signed divorce agreement. After that, lawyers handled my divorce matters. This life like the previous, the divorce was fast and smooth. The only difference was my divorce settlement was no longer 50 yuan, but 50 million. Looking at the bank card numbers, tears slid from my eye corners again. Reborn once, I ultimately got what I wanted by playing pitiful and enduring. On the day I got the money, I changed my name to Claire, new rebirth. After that, I left again, no one knew where I was going, nor did I. But I was happy. Life with money, leisure, and life is really good. Ethan's side story. Serena was ill, cancer. When I watched her back leaving my office, my heart seemed smashed with a blood hole. This scene seemed to have happened sometime before. That day, I hurriedly followed Serena to the hospital, originally to care for her, but the nurse advised not to enter. Miss Serena didn't want to see me. Also told me Miss Serena went to a crowded place, expended too much energy, now uncomfortable. Then I stood outside Serena's ward by the bed, watching her lie on the bed vomiting violently, but with a smile on her face. My eyes instantly reddened. Fearing tears falling in front of the nurse, I hurriedly ran outside the hospital, until a deserted corner, then tightly curled my body, painfully crying out. I didn't know why this happened, just like I didn't know when the girl who was always like a little son before me started crying constantly. But that night in my sleep dream gave me the answer. I dreamed of my previous life, quarreling ugly with Serena. She was always jealous of me and Ivy, always crying and making scenes with me. I was annoyed beyond measure. No matter how I explained to her that Ivy and I really had nothing, she didn't believe. Even installed phone tracking on my phone, hired private detectives to follow me, even called police to catch adultery. Perhaps because of her crying and scenes, or her sulking, that day taking Ivy to meet clients, I had relations with Ivy. But unexpectedly, caught red-handed by Serena again. Seeing her victorious gaze, I was angered to pain again. Immediately proposed divorce, even used 48 yuan divorce assets to insult her. Ivy hadn't worked these years, relying on me daily. I'd see how she lives after divorcing me. Sure enough, when she sought lawyers all over the city, they all told her she could only get 48 yuan assets. Serena's eyes quenched with indissoluble pain. She looked at me incredulously. Ethan, so from your early entrepreneurship, you were guarding against me? I was stunned by the sorrow in her eyes, even somewhat regretting insulting her with 48 yuan assets, but unexpectedly, the shrewish Serena angrily rushed over, slapped me, even scratched my face. I was angered half to death again. Yes, Serena, I tell you, divorced from me, you'll live worse than a dog. Serena's face paled again from my words. She trembled looking at me. Ethan, I'll live well to show you. After that, Serena left the Civil Affairs Bureau. And I, as if competing with Serena, deliberately avoided her when she came, deliberately passionately kissed Ivy in the car when she blocked it, deliberately showed affection in front of her when she came to our home. I didn't know what I was doing. I did fall for Ivy, I admit. But how many men in the world forever sleep with only one woman? I wanted Serena to accept fate. If I had something with other women later, she could tolerate. After all, business sometimes has sparks. So even after divorcing Serena, I missed her a lot, really missed her, but I endured. But I didn't expect what awaited with Serena's body. I'll never forget at the villa door, seeing her frozen stiff body, that desperate pain. I cried running forward tightly hugging her, hoping she could open eyes like before, hoping she would gently tiptoe kiss me like before, hoping every day returning home, there's a light waiting. But Serena died. Even later police told me Serena died of illness, cancer, even because no money for treatment, relying entirely on hospital relief using the worst to sustain life. Then the receptionist told me Serena came to find me several times, even once knelt on the ground begging her to let her in to see me. The receptionist softened and wanted to let her, but just at the elevator, blocked by Ivy. In the end, Serena didn't see me. Hearing the receptionist and police, I cried trembling all over, pain like a sharp blade instantly stabbing me bloody. I simply couldn't imagine how painful the cancerous Serena, the Serena coming to find me, was. And because of resentment, after Serena's funeral, I drove Ivy out. Then Ivy cried begging me not to leave her, saying Serena dead is dead, she already had a child in her belly. Hearing Ivy's words, I laughed especially desolately. No one knew, back when I was the boy wearing thick glasses, under strict mother's pressure, wanted suicide countless times, it was Serena's candy fed into my mouth that melted me, and every midnight, the girl in pajamas with messy hair vigorously waving at me that melted me. I live in this world to give her the best life. But why did I betray her? So I didn't soften from Ivy's cries, just gave her dad a business deal, made her abort the child. After that, I swallowed a bottle of sleeping pills, tightly holding Serena's ashes and died. Seeing the previous life scenes, I was hateful and painful. What pained me more was discovering Serena was reborn. She really had no feelings for me anymore. Her cancer didn't want my care. She didn't want to talk to me. Even her gaze towards me was especially cold and hard. I wanted to salvage her, but I didn't know how. Could only dazedly fly abroad every few days to see her. But I didn't dare enter. Without me, Serena lived well, lounging would emit free smiles. Serena riding bicycle, like a freely dancing butterfly. Looking at her, I realized the Serena married to me was really unhappy. Just like that, I watched over Serena for a full 5 years. Finally, after her hospital checkup, I got the divorce agreement I had feared. I didn't want divorce, but Serena said wanted to talk. Serena asked how much money I'd give her. I hesitated, not that I didn't want to give money, I feared even my only remaining thing, money, couldn't keep Serena. But unexpectedly, Serena talked to me about the previous life's Serena. Guilt instantly like a sharp blade stabbed my heart. I didn't dare look at her, only dared hang my head. Until Serena entered the room, I collapsed limply on the sofa. That night Serena slept soundly in the room, while I sat in the living room all night. After that, I still decided to fulfill Serena. Even if I'd be very painful. Very painful. Even painfully suffocating. Sure enough, after Serena got the money, she vanished. She gave me no chance to see her again, even like before, standing downstairs gazing from afar. After that, not long after Serena left, my depression relapsed. I started insomnia, started hallucinations. I hallucinated Serena still in this home, but then my mind frequently showed Serena lying frozen dead outside the villa. Finally, 3 years after Serena disappeared, on the day I suicided in the previous life, I chose suicide again with a bottle of sleeping pills. Before death, I really wanted to see Serena once more. But until after my death, until my soul guarded my coffin for a full 7 days, Serena didn't come. Until the soul floated to a foreign countryside. I saw Serena with a big belly, beside her a strange man. She smiled happily, the man beside gently rubbed her hair top. Looking at the scene before, soul state me cried tears soaking. But after, my soul faded more and more.